I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And today, as always, I have an amazing warrior guest, Cristie Remmel, and I'll talk about her in a second. But first, let me remind you why you're here. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. In each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future, and today's guest is absolutely no exception. Cristie Remmel is an awesome warrior. She's a mother, a U.S. Navy veteran, mentor, educator, art therapy trainer, author, speaker, and a marketing specialist. That's a mouthful. As a mom, she developed homeschool curriculum while homeschooling her children, was instrumental in developing ghostwriting protocols, and is a ghostwriting author. Cristie's first book, Wealth Within Reach, The Everyday Strategist, became an Amazon #1 bestseller in 2013. She's also a featured author with At Ease Magazine and Conscious Collaborators. Her love for giving back to the community has led her to raise guide dogs for the blind and become a mentor of new puppy raisers. She's a frequent guest speaker at elementary schools and shows kids how to deal with stress and anxiety through simple methodologies, as well as how to get A's in school. I'd like that with my 5 kids for sure. Her favorite community outreach is to be involved with the veteran community by volunteering with the American Legion, the Honor Guard, the VFW Frisco, and the Marine Corps League of McKinney, and most recently the DFW Veterans Chamber of Commerce. Her belief in the power of relationships in life and in business leads her to her mantra, creating connections and serving others is what I do. Cristie Remmel, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things on the other side of town? I was in South Africa last week, so now I said to you before we started, I'm glad to be back home in Dallas, but in the Dallas Metroplex. So how's it going in your world today?
How's it going? Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here today and inviting me to be part of the podcast. And everything is going amazingly well. Everything is as it should be.
Well, that's good to hear. And you're smiling, you're here. I know you got some of your kids around, and we'll power through that, and that'll be fun. But that's life. It's awesome. So nothing really too exciting or unusual going on today. I know the weather's beautiful. I can look out my window. I think it's probably that way up in your part of town too, right?
Yes, we're having beautiful weather today. The exciting part for me is Friday mornings is what I look forward to, which is when our chamber meets. So if you wanted something exciting, then we've already had that excitement, which was our meeting this morning.
I love that. I'm glad you brought that up because I've been, you've invited me in to share with that community before, and it's a great, growing, thriving association, chamber of veterans, really inspiring and powerful folks. So yeah, you had mentioned it earlier, and now I'm sure your energy is probably already up, as I talked about before. My ideal day doesn't include early morning meetings on a regularly scheduled basis, although I'm willing to do it. So, I'm impressed by the fact that you're willing to do that and serve them in that way. And I know you're doing a great work there. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit in the third segment. Well, let's do this. I want to take a quick break, hear a little of our theme song for the audio audience. It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And then what we'll do is we'll come back. And what I want to hear in the next segment, really, Cristie, as I said, was your story, how you got from where you started to where you are today. So let's hear a little of that theme song. We'll be right back with Cristie Remmel and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people.
All right, we are back. Cristie, as I said before the break, how did you get from where you started to where you are today?
Well, you first have to join the military, right? So I joined the Navy right out of high school, and just because I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to get out of El Paso. When I was growing up, minimum wage was $3.25, and obviously you're not able to support a family or even yourself with that minimum wage. And unemployment was very high in El Paso around that time. So I looked at my options, and the military was an option that I investigated. So I joined the military, went into the Navy, turned 18 in basic training, turned 21 in the Persian Gulf. And that's how you get to where I am today.
So joining the Navy, so I'm connecting the dots here. So money was a big driver there, being able to support yourself and your family, and that's admirable. What was the reason for, just out of curiosity, what was the reason for the Navy versus my son-in-law's in the Air Force? My father was in the Army. I mean, my father-in-law was in the Marines, so just to get all those out there. But and I don't think you ever say they were a Marine or they were in a Marine,
right?
You're always a Marine. So how did and Navy? I've got some good friends that went to the Naval Academy and some of those things. What prompted you to pick Navy? Was it, I don't know, what was that?
Well, El Paso is an Army base, so I did not want to be stationed back in El Paso, so I crossed out the Army. Was the first thing I did. I didn't want to be stationed in El Paso, so cross off the Army base. I'm afraid of heights, so cross off the Air Force. I can't swim very well, so cross off the Coast Guard. And Navy, it is the sea. However, you're in on a ship or you're on land. So there you go. Actually, so cross off the Marines. I didn't think I was physically strong to do what the Marines do, right? And as it turned out, I ended up with the Marines through the Navy. So that was a myth or a disbelief, or whatever you want to call it on my part. So I had crossed off the Marines because of that, and so I ended up with the Navy. I looked at where the bases are for the Navy, their uniforms, and some of the billets that they offered. So when I went to speak to the recruiter, they basically gave me everything that I wanted when I signed up. So that's how I ended up with the Navy.
Well, that's fascinating, and you're definitely a warrior because you actually evaluated your options. You made intentional decisions. We always say, our zombie brain kind of goes with what I call autopilot, or just turning the crank, just going through, and okay, somebody said I should go into the Navy, but you didn't. That wasn't you. You actually had a goal. You wanted to do some travel. You wanted to see some things. You wanted to do some things, and you wanted to fund some things. So you actually walked that path, had a plan, executed it, and now you're on that. So let me ask you this. This is always one of the things. I've talked to some women that were in the military or that have along the way. on this podcast as well. What were the zombies, if you will, in that whole thing? The challenges. By the way, zombie is a metaphor for challenges. For those that listen to this podcast know. What kinds of things did you have to overcome in that particular part of your journey?
In the military? Well, my dad passed away when I came out of my first school and I went to my first duty station. So he passed, well, right before he passed away, and this is how I ended up with the Marines, was that he had reached out and said he had been diagnosed with terminal cancer and, diagnosis 6 months to a year to live. So I submitted my request to transfer to the West Coast because I was on the East Coast. And he passed away before I even got to the West Coast, but and it was like literally less than 6 months.
Wow.
From the time he told me to the time I initiated everything to I think it was like a month, he passed away. So I spoke to the recruiter that was doing my heart transfer for, to the West Coast, because I was all the way on the East Coast. And he said, there's just this billet that came open, and it's for female corpsmen or female medics to go play with the Marines. And at that point, I really didn't care what they gave me because I just wanted to get to California. This was right before my dad passed away, right?
Sure.
So I said, okay, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I didn't really care either because I think, well, whatever it is, I'll cross the bridge, right? When I come to it. So they said, they looked at I was in very good physical shape. So they said, okay, you passed all the Navy physical standards with high numbers. You have good tests because I've always been smart. So I've always gotten A's. So they said, we think that you'll be fine. And I said, okay, fine. So I got my orders to transfer to California, and my dad passed away. So that's how I really ended up with the Marines. And my first, I guess that was my first challenge, right?
Sure.
My dad, I didn't even get to see him. And then the second challenge was when I got to Camp Pendleton, California, and I was like, what the hell did I get myself into? Right? I crossed out the Marines for a reason, right? And so, but then I was like, well, I'm already here. I'm not going to fail. Failure is not an option. So I just did what I had to do. And I ended up being an FMF corpsman with the Marines. And then I spent the rest of my enlistment with the Marines.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss and that part of your story. That is, but I run my life by divine appointment, and there's always a reason for things. And it sounds like things unfolded. Sometimes as I say, we make plans and then God laughs and then things happen. And so, but again, you illustrated not only some real zombies, loss of a family member, not having means to do things and having to make decisions based upon that, having our plan that we thought would get us further down the road be disrupted, but yet having to deal with it. All those things are really, really strong warrior lessons along here, because again, sometimes things look good on paper, but in life, there's always challenges. Life is about challenge and support. So those zombies are going to occur. So you got in there, you got into the Marines, and you made it work. And as a warrior, that's a beautiful thing. So where do you go from there? tell me a little bit more about your story. I want to get to today. Once we get to today, we'll take a break.
Okay. So I got deployed to the Persian Gulf War, where I spent 6 very long months in the heat, and I don't camp at all. I've done 6 months of camping, so we're no longer camping. Decided when we came back from the Gulf that I was going to get out. My knees were hurting a lot. My back was hurting a lot. Love the Marines, but they do wear you out physically. And I'm not a very big person. I'm only 5'3". Back then I was 115 pounds. So when you're having fun, which I did, but at the same time, everything that I did kind of just wore out my joints. So I decided I wanted to choose to walk for the rest of my life. So I got out of the military, became a stay-at-home mom because I got married, raised my 3 girls. And then when I got divorced in 2012, that was, I guess, there were some major issues or bumps on the road between the time I got out of the military and up to 2012. But really my journey to where I'm at now started in 2012. And 2015, I would say, from 2012 to 2015, I really felt like I was out of place, like I didn't belong anywhere. Single mom, raising my girls, and just trying to figure out where do I belong in life. In 2015, the suicide for military exiting was very high, and everybody was becoming very much aware. So I wanted to be part of the solution. And I asked myself, what is it that our military is not getting that they're choosing to end their lives? And that was the motivator for me to jump into the veteran community and try to figure that out. And so that really started my journey. I started volunteering with several organizations, taking veterans to the VA, holding their hands, helping them fill out the paperwork, if they needed to get into the hospital, if they needed to go to their appointments, having somebody to talk to. And I was very happy in that realm. It is a very dark realm when you are around people that are depressed, that are suicidal, and I was not recognizing that I was one of those people as well. I had some PTSD and a lot of anxiety, a lot of nightmares, but I really didn't recognize them on myself. I knew I had issues, right? But I was there to serve others, not really serve myself. And it wasn't until the other veterans that I was hanging around with were like, Cristie, you really need to go to the mental health. Cristie, you really need to get in and, get help, and it took the wife of a veteran who was also very much involved, who started asking me, do you want me to go to the VA with you? I'll go with you. I'll meet you there. I'll fill out the paperwork for you. And it took her about 6 months of gently asking me, coaxing me. And I finally said yes, mostly to shut her up because I was tired of her asking me. So I was like, okay, so if I go do this, she'll stop asking me. And so I met her at the hospital. We were there early in the morning, so she helped me fill out the paperwork. She actually filled it out for me. She asked me the question. I gave her the answers. And then when I had my first appointment, she asked me if I wanted to go, if she wanted, if I wanted her to accompany me. And I said, no, I think I can manage this. So I then received help myself, and that really changed my whole entire world, which then puts us to 2019. So in 2019, I was part of some veteran networking events, groups in here in the Dallas area. And they had asked me, there was this one particular group that had disbanded and they wanted to come back together. And so they asked me if I would be willing to be the leader of the group. I had no idea why they asked me, but I said yes without thinking about it. I was like, yep, this is perfect. I got excited. We stood up that group. So we had like a whole calendar planned for speakers and all these great and amazing things that I was going to do for the group. And then COVID hit, right? So do you want to stop there or do you want me to continue?
Well, COVID hit. It is a good place to kind of take a quick break. So just to recap. So first of all, you said a few things that are very strong warrior nuggets or warrior messages, and that is that sometimes when we have a vision or a passion or an inspiration, as I call it, to serve others, that's God's way of telling us that we've got some things we need to work on ourselves. And one of the things I tell a lot of my clients, a lot of the people that are brought into my path, and by the way, clients doesn't mean that they're necessarily paying me, because that's the difference between being retired, as I call it, and working for a paycheck or working for the money, is that I focus on having impact first, and then if money follows, it's a beautiful thing. I think you and I have talked about that. But that being said, I find it very fascinating and also very therapeutic for warriors here to realize that sometimes when you're dealing with your stuff and you're trying to get through your own stuff, that taking the focus off of yourself and your own feelings and looking at how to serve others will ultimately reveal the things in you that were blocking or holding you back. So that's a great lesson, if you will, that they should take away. So when COVID hit and meeting in person, I know this from my own networking experience where we were all in the room and thriving and all that. And then all of a sudden, everything went virtual like we are today. Even though we're in the same city, we're virtually connected for this discussion. What happened there? Tell me about what you run into there and some of the zombies you had to overcome from there till we get to now.
Well, when COVID hit, I had my group, right? And it was 19 people, 19 veteran business owners that I had the privilege and honor to lead. I got them all on Zoom. So I called them and I said, hey, let's keep our meeting. We were already meeting Friday mornings at 7:30 in the morning. And so I helped everybody get on Zoom, and we started having really like every other day meetings because we didn't know what was going on, right? So people were worried about losing their business, right? Not being able to make money, as was I, right? All of my clients that had brick and mortar businesses closed. So if they closed, that meant that I wasn't generating a paycheck either, right? So we had to figure that out. So really 2 weeks into COVID, literally 2 weeks into COVID, the idea of a veteran chamber came about. And one of our group members had asked me if it was a legitimate thing. And I said, I really don't know, right? I've never heard of a veteran chamber, but let me find out. So I spent a few hours doing some research on the internet, and I found an organization that had all the information that I needed. I downloaded the paperwork, I signed the paperwork, filled it out, signed it, and mailed it into the government. So, like within 3 days, I was a veteran chamber, and so I called my friends back and I said, hey, we're starting a chamber. Do you want to join? And they were like, what is it? So I told them my vision of what the chamber was going to be, and they all said yes.
Wow.
I was actually surprised because none of us knew what we were doing, and I was surprised that they said yes. I'll just join you, right? And so I said, okay, great. Well, we need money. So we're going to have a fee. It's going to be a small fee because we need to get this off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So then I spent a couple days driving to people's homes and getting a check out of the mailbox, or they were doing like a Zelle, transfer or a PayPal, however they chose to pay. And then the other issue I had was, great, I don't have a bank account for the chamber. I have a bank account, but not for the chamber, right?
Right.
And so then I spent a couple days calling different banks to see who would let me open up a bank account. So I found one that let me do the paperwork through the drive-thru, because I was like, I'll stand outside. I'd slide the paperwork under the door, however you want it. And I said, can we do it through the drive-thru? And they said, oh, that's an idea. So they verified, they said, okay. So I literally sat on the drive-thru, filled out their paperwork, turned it in, and we did that until everything was set. I had a bank account, I deposited the money, and I was like, okay, we're legitimate.
Well, I love that. Actually, I'll just one of the things you said that's a lesson, and there's probably more. So but I just really want to, again, the way you dealt with the limitation or the challenge, because basically life is all about challenge and support. That's how we even survive as humans. So you saw the challenge, the opportunity, you exhibited a lot of leadership and actually being willing to keep moving forward, even when you didn't know. It's kind of like the blind leading the blind, right? But that's brilliant. I mean, that's a warrior thing, right? We don't have all the answers. We just see the possibilities, and then we fill in the gaps. We do things that we have to do in order to keep our forward momentum. And, it's a challenge not to be frustrated because, how do you fill out the paperwork when you can't meet somebody face to face? How do you go through that during a time when fear rules the day, where you're trying to just still stay focused and moving forward in what I call the zombie apocalypse? So you got a bank account, and then we're almost to today. I can feel it. So you got a bank account, and then what?
Well, then I had to figure out, because I didn't use a lawyer to incorporate the chamber, and I was doing this literally on my own, that I had to figure out what do we need, right? So the paperwork said we need a board. So I put my board together. I asked my most trusted friends if they wanted to be board members. Thank God they all said yes. And then the bylaws was fun because I did research. Well, I had nothing else to do, right? Nobody was really working. Mm-hmm. So I spent 2 or 3 days going through other chambers, downloading their bylaws, and I have a very large table. So I read through all of those bylaws, and I literally cut them out. So this is old school. I cut out the pieces that I liked, and then I pasted them together with Scotch tape. Then I formed my bylaws, and then I tweaked them some more. And then I was like, okay, we have bylaws. So that took me 2 weeks. Took me 3 days to do our website, because I do websites. That's how I earn my living. Mm-hmm. So it took me 3 solid days, getting up at, and starting to work like at 8 a.m. and stopping work like at 8 p.m., putting everything I wanted to do on the website. So within 4 weeks, we had a website, we had bylaws, we had a board, we had scheduled speakers, we had everything. I mean, when you looked at it way back when, we had nothing, but we looked like we had everything, and so now we're starting our 4th year. Yeah. And I never really looked back.
Well, not looking back is actually a warrior attribute that I have to overcome in this segment every time I do it, because that is, warriors move forward with intention. 95% of the things that go through our mind are the same things that went through our mind yesterday. And therefore, if we just do that, then our destiny is defined by our history only. And the only thing to do is to say, okay, I got that and I'm moving forward. And how do I keep moving forward? So you've illustrated that in your story in a big way. Well, let's do this. I think we've gotten to today. If not, you can always pull in anything in your story that informs today. But when we get back, I want to hear about why you're doing what you're doing today, which may be apparent to those listening here, but let's hear the story. So we'll take a quick break. We'll hear a little more of Ricky Jean Wright and our theme song, and we'll be right back with the third segment of Warrior vs. Zombie and Cristie Remmel.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth.
All right, Cristie. So, wow, I am more amazed and impressed with you now than I've ever been, and I've known you for a little bit. So, but not well enough, I guess. So that's good. I'm glad we're here. So tell me, why are you doing what you're doing today?
I gotta just backtrack just a little bit. So, and then it goes into this segment here.
Sure.
So, after I had done all of this, fear did set in, uncertainty and doubt, and the feeling that I wasn't competent enough to do this. And literally for about 2 weeks, I absolutely regretted starting the chamber, asking these people for money, doing everything that I had done for about a period of 2 weeks. I felt like I wasn't qualified, that I didn't belong, that I absolutely didn't know what I was doing. And I found myself wanting to crumble, and then telling myself, these people believe in you. These people are following you. These people gave you their money. So now you have to really suck it up and deal with it. And I had to just tell myself, okay, well, learn what you don't know and grow into the role that you've assigned yourself. Because nobody did it to me. I did it to myself, right? So I assigned myself a role, and I just had to grow into it. I had to grew, into the role that I appointed myself. And that is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I still have that responsibility. Now we have over 100 members in our chamber. So I have more of a wonderful and amazing responsibility to the people that join our chamber to continue to do what I'm doing, which is impact our community for the better.
That is powerful. And connecting the dots just a little bit here is that, one of the things you did say early on is your passion and your learning and how it served you in your story for serving veterans. So when you look at, and you found that you were not only able to serve them, but ultimately serve yourself. So underpinning that, what you described as a zombie that you experienced after making that decision to move forward is what I call the valley of despair, which is usually, now that you are excited about your vision and you're moving forward, then all of a sudden the how comes into play. And then there's this thing that's labeled, I'm not big on labels, but it's pretty common to call it the imposter syndrome that says, hey, who am I? Am I qualified to do this? Why am I better than anybody else? How could your head, your zombie brain starts attacking your warrior brain and saying that. But you did also what warriors do is, okay, shut up, move forward, suck it up. You said, I like that. That's, my dad used to say that to me all the time. Suck it up, buttercup, and get moving. Now life's tough. So anyway, so that's awesome. So, and obviously you are a veteran. You do kind of understand the fundamentals of at least that demographic and what they need. And you've also found some unique value in your ability to help people, number one, network, get together in the chamber, but you're also connecting the dots here, and marketing is an important thing, right? Getting their message out. That's one of the things I do on this podcast. I'm always open to feature warriors, maybe that don't have an audience, don't have a name. And so, but that's a lot of what you're probably doing in your website development and your marketing with these folks, right? Is the value of understanding what they need and also being willing to serve them in your way, as well as connect them to other people that can serve them. And you've demonstrated those kinds of things. What other kinds of unique value or things are you hoping to bring to that community as you move forward?
Well, I think the biggest value, and by the way, most of my clients are not even veterans because I don't market myself to our veteran community. I'm there to serve them. Mm-hmm. I'm not really there if I get a client, amazing, but that's not my purpose, right? So I don't really market myself to our chamber people. I'm there in the president role, and I'm there to serve them. So most of my clients I get outside of the chamber. But I believe that the biggest value that our chamber has to offer is, number one, the sense of family. We are a tribe. And so just having a family will help anybody feel better about themselves. They feel like they belong. They feel like they're getting up with a purpose, right? So having a family. The other thing that we've done different from any other chamber that exists is that I have managed to collaborate with different organizations. So for example, Power Tools is a company out of California, and they offer discounted courses for our veteran business owners and our patriot businesses in the chamber. So if they lack knowledge in business, they can probably go in on the Power Tools link and find that which they lack, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, if somebody just started a business and they don't have a business plan, they can take a small course on how to create your one-page business class. If you already have a business and you have employees now and you need HR and you have no idea what is a function of HR, how do you get started? They have that class there too. So if you are a business and you want funding, we have a pitch deck for that. So that's one of the things. The other thing is marketing classes, right? So for businesses that are already established and they say, okay, I want to focus more attention on how do I market? Not necessarily do it themselves, but when you start marketing, you want to know enough so that you ask the right people, the right questions of the people that are going to service you, right? Mm-hmm. We can't be the jack of all trades, and we can't always do everything, because then that doesn't help you grow your business. That just makes you busier. And if you're busier, then you're not growing your business, right? But you have to have enough knowledge to ask the right questions. So we have marketing classes for that. And then one of the things that really, really helped me in my journey of healing and overcoming the obstacles that I had was personal development. So when a person spends time in their own personal development, then life gets better, right? So then you become more aware. You become more willing to look for different solutions, but you first have to work on yourself before things change. So I have brought in personal development for that. And then the last thing is we are associated with metrics learning, and metrics learning through the state of Texas provides free certifications and courses for all residents in Texas. And they gave us a special link. So that link allows any resident in the state of Texas to go through us to access those certifications. And there's over 7,000 categories. So there's something for everybody, and it's free. So that's another thing that we have managed to do for our chamber members and our community at large, because not only do I want to help our veterans, right, which is my primary focus,
Right.
By default, I want to help the community.
So love that. And we, by the way, Cristie, again, we're getting to know each other even a little more deeply here. And I really, really appreciate you sharing with the audience, because we are much more aligned even than I even realized in terms of our approach to life. I mean, the fact that you said, okay, I don't sell to veterans per se. You're serving your community. As I always say, when I flipped the switch almost 18 years ago to retirement, people think, oh, wow, you're retired. Why are you even doing a podcast? Or what, why are you running this network group? Why are you meeting with people all the time? Because retirement's not doing nothing. Retirement's doing what you want, when you want, with who you want, where you want. And then the other part of that is that I just flipped the switch from making a lot of money, and I made a lot of money, and giving a large portion of that to things I cared about, to saying, I'm going to make an impact, which is what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And if money follows, it's a beautiful thing. But I don't approach life in the communities that I serve and the people that God brings into my path. I don't approach it as, okay, where's the paycheck here? I approach it as, how can I have an impact? And if I am impacting, if you are impacting your veterans and you are bringing them value, then I have faith. I trust people ultimately that it will come back. The monetization is kind of a blessing. It's kind of something that comes through that. And it doesn't have to be the community that you're monetizing. So, but God, the universe, whatever you want, will bring that to you. As I say, karma can be a bitch, or it can be a blessing. And so I think you're really, really exercising the blessing part of karma. So let's do this. I know there's probably a whole lot more we could talk about, Cristie, and I am so, so grateful that you share with the audience. But I do want to take another quick break, and I want you to give you a second to think about it. And I know I mentioned it before, is when we come back to the third segment, if there's anything we take away from your story, from what you're doing, maybe something you haven't even hit on yet, what would you want us, after listening to this podcast, to take away? So we'll take a quick break. Hear the last segment of It's Not to Get in There, our theme song by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be right back with Cristie Remmel and what I call the Land the Plains segment of Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God.
Cristie, this has been so cool. All right, we're back. So let's, as I said before the break, if we take away anything from this discussion, and you said if they heard this, it would be worth it, what would you want us to take away? And it can be more than one. Warriors are always overachievers. But what would you want us to take away?
I think that I would like people to take away the resiliency that is within us if we are aware of our own power to create our reality in our world.
Wow. So you said that in your way, and I love it, because what I heard was embrace the possibilities and the vision and the cause that really you have, your unique reason for being on the planet, and then realize that it's not about what you didn't do in the past or what the obstacles you're going to face or the hows that you don't understand. And these all came through in your story, by the way. Those things are they will be dealt with over time, but you have it in you to make that dream a reality, and don't be discouraged along the road. Is that a fair way of describing what you're saying there?
Yes, it is. You probably said it more eloquently that I possibly could. We could probably do another podcast on Cristie's philosophy and way of seeing the world, because I do teach that. That's what I teach to the children, is a way of seeing the world, because they're little sponges, right? So if I can influence their little minds to change how they're viewing the world and grow up seeing the world differently, then they will be happier. They will have less depression, less suicidal ideations, they'll just make a better world.
Well, you know what? You just volunteered for the new podcast I'm launching, which is called Triggered by Warrior versus Zombie. And it's basically some of these little nuggets that I hear from warriors along the way. And then when somebody has a specific focus, then we'll have an episode where we drill down in that. So you just volunteered for that, whether you realize it or not. And that's just launching. This is episode 112, but that one's just getting started. So we'll have fun with that. So good. Thanks for volunteering. We'll get it on the calendar. All right. Well, Cristie, it's been awesome. This replay and podcast will be up on our Be Connected channel and on the YouTube channel, and it'll be on all podcasting platforms. So, but beyond that, how do we connect with you? What's the best way that we can follow up after hearing this podcast with Cristie Remmel?
Well, for the chamber, they can just go to VFWVeteransChamber.org. For me, if they want to reach out to me, is my first and last name @gmail.com. So it's CristieRemmel@gmail.com. They can also find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all the social media, just with Cristie Remmel.
Yeah, with a marketing focused, I figured people can find you just about. The biggest challenge there is knowing how to spell your name. With Cristie, it's Cristie, Cristie, and Remmel is Remmel. So, but the good news is that name is unique enough that probably is not too hard to find if you get it spelled.
And there's nobody else named like me, so it's easy to find.
Yeah, I don't have that asset going for me. So David Roberts is pretty common. Well, that's it. This has been awesome, Cristie. I could talk to you for a long, long time. And I so appreciate, again, you being willing to share with our audience.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I have fun. I do have fun telling my story. As much as I've said it, I enjoy saying it, because I do feel that it could bring hope or inspire somebody into action.
I can see that, honestly. I can, if people are listening to this audio platform, if you looked at the body language from when we started the conversation to now we're talking, and we've got our story out there, we've got those things, there's a lot more smiling. It's a lot more relaxed. It's a lot more evident that we hit into what your passion is. And I love that. So, well, let's hear the final outro of It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be back next Friday with another episode of Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know.